Welcome to another edition of the Current Issues and Analysis Show. I'm your host and presenter, Michael Young. Thank you very much for joining me. With me as guest today is the Honourable Member of Parliament, Mr. Joseph Hamilton for the People's Progressive Party Civic. Mr. Hamilton, thank you very much for joining me. I'll tell you a little bit about Mr. Hamilton. Not only is he a current member of the People's Progressive Party Civic as a member of Parliament, but he's also a former executive member of the People's National Congress Reform. And most of your political career, Mr. Hamilton, has been spent as part of the PNCR, fighting for the struggles of that party and the aims and objectives originally then. You would agree with me that now the party has been making several headlines as the PNC prepares to go to another Congress to select its leader, and as well we have a situation in which a Partnership for National Unity is celebrating its first anniversary, and the party has already started to blow its own trumpet with respect to its accomplishments and the goals and whatever it is that it has set out for itself. Now, I want to speak to you first of all, not in your capacity as an MP currently of the People's Progressive Party Civic, but as one of those old stallions in the PNCR who understood the ideology of the former leaders of the party and the founding members of the party. And now we have a situation where the media has been asking currently Mr. Granger, who is running for the leadership post of the PNCR, why it is necessary for him to hold all three opposition caps. That is, the opposition leader, the post of the chairman of the Partnership for National Unity, and now he's running for the leadership of the PNCR. Now, is that an ideology that is supported by the original founding members of the PNCR, that all three caps must be held by one person if there is a coalition or so?
Thank you very much, Michael, for having me. For us to understand what is happening, I will want to go back a little.
That's fine.
In 2007, the Congress, when we supported Vincent Alexander to be leader of the People's National Congress Reform, it was more than supporting a person. It was a set of ideas that we were seeking to bring to bear, because we thought that the PNC needed to grow and needed to change. And one of the issues that we championed was to get away with the philosophy or ideology of a maximum leader.
Okay.
And therefore, we brought a resolution to the Congress stating that it is not necessarily the leader of the People's National Congress Reform. He will be or she will be the presidential candidate. That is how that came into being. So that was accepted, and that is what created the conditions at the level of the PNC for the primary-like arrangement, because those matters also, we tabled about 10 things that we think should be done differently as regards leadership, contesting for leadership in the party. Of course, the whole issue of transparency, of course, the whole issue of delegates and those kinds of issues. Now, the PNC moved to the position where the leader in 2011 was not the presidential candidate.
So that
recommendation was accepted. What you find now is Mr. Granger is attempting to have that recommendation thrown into the dust basket, because Mr. Granger, everything he's saying is seeking to say, listen, all the authority and power must reside with the one person. And that is so the PNC is returning to a position that was discarded in 2007. That's the first point. The second point is, during the elections campaign of 2011, in my presentations at political meetings, I made the point that persons who are trained military leaders, they have a difficulty participating in democratic politics, because their training is not in a democratic sphere. They are trained to give orders. They are trained to instruct. They are trained to direct. And so when they come into politics, they find it difficult to operate, because politics is about persuasion. Politics is about having the best argument. Politics is about cajoling. Politics is about lobbying. And a military leader, that is not part of his characteristic. He wasn't trained to be that. And therefore, you have that difficulty. And Mr. Granger, that is the difficulty he has. I mean, I went beyond Guyana to make the point that you look across the world. Military leaders, whether Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, wherever, all they brought to countries are misery. Because when they get into politics, they're incapable of dealing with challenges because they were never accustomed to that. And so when you're challenged, when you challenge them, you become an enemy of the military leader.
But Mr. Granger says, Mr. Hamilton, that he wants to hold all three caps of, in the opposition, coalition and the PNCR, that is opposition leader, as I said, leader of the party, and as well the chairman of APNU, because he believes that one person will be able to better coordinate all of these responsibilities. He also said that he feels as well that if he is given that mantle, he will seek advice from all of his MPs, and the workload could be distributed, because he feels that gone are the days when these posts should be divided, because there's need for better coordination so that they can unseat the ruling party. Do you subscribe to that?
Well, the thing is that you have to decide what you want. You cannot be in contradiction of yourself. You cannot speak to the new politics. You cannot say, listen, gone are the days of the maximum leader, and you are attempting. Everything you do suggests that you want to be a maximum leader.
Okay.
That is the issue. Mr. Granger will say, and I suspect he said that, listen, the days of but I believe very strongly that Mr. Granger comes from the old school of the maximum leader theory.
Okay.
I strongly believe that, and therefore that is what he's attempting to perpetuate. And if you take the words of Ms. Faith Arden, she made this similar point several months ago, that coming out of the primary or whatever they had, and after then, it was Mr. Granger's show. The person, and he's saying the same thing again. That listen, when he becomes leader of the party, he would seek to embrace all the persons who are disaffected and who left the party for whatever reason. He said that several months ago, and that attempt is yet to be made as leader of the opposition. So the point is, Michael, is Mr. Granger is an old school politician.
Now, there's also talk, he says, that gone are the days when the PNCR asks whether or not, I think he was asked by journalists whether or not the PNCR could contest the Northern election singly and win, given the fact that the major player within a current coalition. And I think his response were gone are the days when the party embraced winner-take-all politics. Do you believe that members of the Central Executives, you may know them, and traditionally the concepts and ideologies that guide the PNCR would see them doing away fully with contesting as a single unit if this coalition collapses?
Well, one of the things is, Michael, is that in 2007 again, the proposals were to embrace civil society, embrace other parties. So the issue of coalition politics was the talking point. The issue of shared governance was the talking point, because some of us strongly believed at that time that if you have a coming together for a period under a constitutional mandate of the parties, it might allow for the ethnic groups to operate and relate, and the country develop in a rapid way. So those conversations are still out there. Those discussions are. I think that the PNC has moved into a position accepting in all levels coalition politics is here to stay. The difficulty with the PNC is that whilst they say that there are persons who are in the senior leadership of the PNC or in the senior leadership of APNU who speak to the issue of ethnic politics. And therefore, again, The PNC must decide whether it's an ethnic party or a national party. That is a contradiction. And again, one of the things I stated why I broke with the PNC is because the discussion revolved around race. It wasn't a national discussion. That is it, you know. So whilst you say I'm a national party, I'm a multi-ethnic, multi-racial party, and you will see the discussions. When you boil it down, the discussions that come to the fore from the persons who argue the case for PNCR, who argue the case for APNU, it is a discussion that is straight ethnic discussion.
Okay. Now, one of the other things that you can help me clarify is, given the fact now that the party is a part, I think, of a 10-member coalition. I don't know whether or not there are 10 parties with the, or 10 parties or organizations altogether with the APNU, but they're saying that one of their major accomplishments happened to be the budget cuts, and and as well, having their way in Parliament or so. That was one of the things that was said. Should those two things be seen as an accomplishment, given the fact that almost every member of the government believes that the new dispensation has not worked? There are Guyanese in the public who are not supportive of the People's Progressive Party Civic or the Alliance for Change that believes that the APNU should have behaved more responsible, and more so the PNCR, judging from their history, should have known how to play better cards in Parliament.
But the issue is, again, what you want. I have, in conversations with leaders in the PNC and in APNU during any parliamentarians, I keep making the point to them that you're still in election mode, you're still in confrontational mode, you're not in negotiation mode. And that is the problem the APNU is faced with. Because within the ranks of APNU, there are persons who believe that the only way they can get their waist around the PPP into the ground. And the fact is the PPP will be here. The party is going no place. You can call it what kind of government. The fact is the PPP is governing the state. The fact is the Constitution is clear that it is only the executive that can collect taxes and dispense government finance. So you can scream how much you want in the Parliament about you're the opposition majority. That don't change anything. It don't put bread and not butter on any person's table, even your constituent. So the problem APNU has, one hand they're saying the PPP is this terrible monster. But the real politics, you have to negotiate with them. Yeah. And therefore, how do they sell that to their people? Because the contradiction is, listen, you're telling us daily that these people are the worst of the worst. And therefore, the leaders of the party, they can deliver nothing to their constituent because they're afraid to negotiate in good faith. And the only way you can have benefit come to your constituent is negotiating with the government of the day. The Americans have a saying, they say, all politics is local. The person who voted for APNU, who is a contractor, and I explained this way to APNU leaders and PNC leaders. A contractor who voted for APNU, who barely scraped a $3 billion contract last year, he wants to know that he can get $13 million in contracts this year because you have said to him that we have power now. Yeah. And he has great expectations. So how are they going to be able to ensure that their constituent benefit? It can only happen by negotiating and having a discussion with the government of the day, and that government of the day is the People's Progressive Party.
Now, again, let's zoom into the leadership race now. Are there other persons who can do an excellent job as leader of the PNCR? I'm not asking you here to endorse any specific leader, but I'm asking you a question that many journalists have not asked. If not Granger, who else? If not Greenwich, who else? Because I believe that, just like all the normal Guyanese, that there are lots of persons within the PNCR who are not necessarily, front runners, or who don't want all of the fame and all of the glory and headlines in the newspapers or so, but who have been working tirelessly and possess the ability to take Guyana forward, or to take the PNCR into a new dimension and into a new, position, into a new era. Are there other persons within the PNCR, as is now, that share the same vision that Vincent Alexander shared, or that you shared, or Faith Harding, or any other person?
Let me answer this way, Michael. The Guyanese people and the supporters of the PNCR is looking out. You have a situation where in 2012, a party that is some 50-odd years old, the people are left with making a decision to elect a leader that is older than the leader that is demitting office. That should really inform. It must mean that the PNC as a political entity has not been able to nurture and bring forward young and new leaders. Because, as I said, I have no difficulty with elderly people or older people than I am. I'm a grandfather. Okay. But the point I'm seeking to make, here you have a political party that is going into a Congress that will elect a leader, and both of the persons who are contesting are nearly 70. And so I'm answering you to say that the PNC has deteriorated terribly, because let us juxtapose that, put it aside, 2007. The contestation and the discussions of that, and even beyond. I can go far back as 2002, when we were discussing the issue of who will lead after oil. You had Truckman name was there, you had Alexander name was there, you had from time back name was there. So we recognized that the party was in a new time and place and a new dispensation, and therefore it was time to take the party over to a new set of leaders and leadership. But in 10 years or thereabout, how it died in 2002, if you look at what has happened, from championing youth and young leadership, one of the great breaking of ranks and problems we had with Desmond Hoy then was when Jack Deere was made presidential candidate of UP. We thought that no way you would have been able to sell a man who is nearly 70 years old against a young man who's 40 years old in a population where 70% of the people would have been young people under 45. You understand that?
I understand.
And that was the problem we had, because we saw it that you could not sell that. And therefore, we have moved from there, at least the PNC, we have moved from that discussion where the names of Truckman and Alexander and Norton and Baca and so, and James McAllister, those were the new leaders. And coming out of that core, a leader would have emerged. 10 years hence, your contest is with two gentlemen who are nearly 70 years old. So I'm answering you that way to say that, in my estimation, the PNC has not moved forward as regards bringing into the for new leaders and new leadership. Most, if not all, of the persons who could have really made great contribution to the PNC who was there, they're not there. One way or the other, they're not there. McAllister is not there. Andrew
So this is not something
there.
that is systematic or only to the PNC, only to the PPP, because the PPP too has lost members who are very esteemed, or persons have had disagreements with that leadership. And one may want to think that it's a similar case in the PNC where persons do not see eye to eye, as in your case, and have left. Now, we're having this discussion. I am sure some members of the public may be thinking in their mind, but this Alexander man, he's left the PNCR, and he's probably saying all of these things because he's bitter, or because he has some big, grave difficulty with the PNCR. He doesn't want to see the PNCR become government. Now, I want you to answer that question before I even pose another question, so that we can dispel these ideologies and ideas in people's minds. If you're only giving your perspective now with respect to the current issues of politics within the opposition from a position of bitterness or a position of dissatisfaction.
That question was asked of me sometime before the elections by Mr. Gordon Mosley.
Yes.
I explained it this way, that I departed company with the PNC in 2007. And for 4 years, I read the papers, I listened to the news, and I didn't make a political comment one way or the other. And so I have no reason to be bitter with the PNC. My position was that I could not continue to sojourn in the PNC because coming out of the Congress, I asked when I saw what was happening to persons who had given their life to the PNC, how they were vilified and how they were denigrated. The question I asked myself at that time, a July month like this, I think it was the 22nd, one Saturday, is whether I would ever encourage my 2 sons to cross the gate at Congress Place. And every time the answer that was coming to me, it was no. And therefore I knew that was a place I didn't want to be. And so I departed company. And when the elections were coming last year, I'm living here, I plan to live here, I plan to make a contribution. And therefore I had to, in conjunction with my family, make a decision firstly is whether I want to get back to be involved in politics. And when that was answered, yes, I can still make a contribution. I had to determine where or who do I support. It was easy for me to support Donald Ramatar because I know him in several years. I didn't know Mr. Granger. I don't know Mr. Granger even up to this moment.
What do you mean you don't know Mr. You have been in the PNCR for years. Mr. Granger is touted as one of the oldest members of the People's National Congress Reform. I don't know how you could not, as a voted MP for the PNCR and as one of their leading persons, not know someone.
No, I'm serious. I don't know Mr. Granger even to this moment. I know Mr. Alexander, I know Mr. Norton, I know Debbie Backer, because these are people we have had long conversation, discussion with. I know where they're coming from. They have already articulated position. I've heard them articulate. I never heard Mr. Granger articulate a political position within the ambit of the PNC. So I indicated, and as I continue to say, I don't know Mr. Granger. I knew Ramatar. We have had, even when I was a PNC, we have had discussions. We have socialized together. So I knew him. I knew Mr. Trotman. I don't know Mr. Granger. Any relationship with Mr. Granger is a passing moment, and that is the factual position. So, you know, I am saying that where we're at today, and you asked a question, you put PNC alongside PPP as regards young and youthful leadership. And if you look over the side of the PPP is preparing a new leadership cadre is there. The AG is there. Priya Manikchan is there. Robert Putzad is there. The PNC cannot similarly put alongside. There was a time when those persons, they were there. The fact is, for whatever reason, they are not there anymore. And that's the reason why you have a contest of 2 persons who are 3 scoring 10. I think that is the number.
What does the party stand to lose? Persons believe that this Congress may be the most critical Congress, or one of, in this year, of the PNCR's history, considering that the ACNU has dominated, taking away the vibrancy many people believe of a party like the PNCR, making the PNCR seems as though it really doesn't exist, not in the parliamentary front. And so it does not exist as a political party, either singularly championing the cause of its constituency, because even that is being done from an ACNU perspective now. So the party is for some people, and then there are lots of persons who may want to differ, maybe in sleep mode, while the ACNU is awake and fighting this coalition championing the cause of many Guyanese persons who they represent. Now, how critical is this leadership battle? And should Mr. Granger become which I guess he will, because he's already in the lead, become the leader of the PNCR again, can he really deal with all of the challenges that a party like the PNCR, will demand of him, the attention? A coalition like APNU will demand of him internally as they seek to devise policies, and at the parliamentary level, that the opposition leader will more than likely demand of him in parliament whenever he has to articulate with the help of his MPs various positions and policies.
Well, Michael, the thing is that I don't think Mr. Granger has the political experience rather, and I don't think he's nimble enough. Coalition politics call leaders in politics, or a leader in a coalition arrangement has to be very nimble, because remember, there's all kinds of interests
yes.
you have to manage, and at the same time you have to ensure that coming to the fore, it's your interest, if it coincides with the other. So, and that don't come by just trusting yourself into politics. It comes via long experience in the political sphere. And I don't think, whilst people might disagree, I suspect Mr. Granger will disagree with me, as an onlooker, I don't think that Mr. Granger is capable of delivering what is necessary to his constituents, because he is failing to negotiate, and secondly, failing to negotiate in good faith.
Is it he that is failing, or is it the government that is failing to negotiate?
No, the government position is the president is responsible for the tripartite talks. The first set of agreements that were signed or decided on by Mr. Granger, the Prime Minister came to the Parliament, read a statement based on what transpired. The Parliament was held up for at least an hour whilst this discussion was happening. You recall, the Prime Minister came and he read the factual position coming out of this conversation. Mr. Granger was there. He didn't object to what was said. And the important thing that was said, that APNU in the discussions had no difficulty with the raise of the tariff in linen. But when pressure was brought to bear on Mr. Granger backed away from the negotiation, from the position that he has accepted in the discussion. And therefore, you have to be able, if you're a leader, you have to lead, even sometimes when your followers, they will wrestle with you. You cannot have, as a political leader, the tail wagging the dog. The dog head must always be in control of what will happen to him at the back of it. And what you have happening is that Mr. Granger is in a position where he is incapable of negotiating because of what they have sold to their constituents.
At the elections.
At the elections.
Finally, what is necessary for, what do you believe, and you're no longer with the PNCR, and so this is no difficulty, what do you believe must be done now for the PNCR as a party to attract once more the people who have been, there for a very long time, those deflectors, and other persons who genuinely want to make an interest, not in APNU, but in the PNCR, who will not, betray that vision of a PNCR leading this country forward, or that vision of a PNCR, even with its partners on board, you understand, taking Guyana forward with their ideology and their policies.
The issue is that you have to, first, what do you have to offer? Offer in a sense of, and you have to recognize firstly, and that is the difficulty with the leadership of the PNC, is that when a person gets involved in politics, more so self-made person, a man who has a profession, or a woman, they have a profession, they have their business, they are well endowed financially and economically. When they come to politics, it's to contribute, and therefore they're coming with an independent mind. And unless political parties recognize that, in this case the PNC lost several persons who could have made contribution because the leadership, and the leader most especially, Mr. Corbyn, failed to understand the new dynamics. that these were people who were coming to bring something to your party. They needed nothing because, first thing, you had nothing to give to them, that's the first thing. And secondly, they needed, because they were already made. And therefore, you had to respect that they were coming with independent positions. And you as a leader, you must be able to mold all of those positions and find a policy, find programs, and unless that can happen, people who can really contribute, who might have an interest, will not. Will not gravitate, and secondly, the persons who are disaffected, they will not, because I mean, for a person who is just looking on, who don't understand the dynamics, would say, okay, they had primary, they elected in a certain way the leader of the presidential candidate, and so, and therefore they have moved on. People have written to say that the PNC has turned a new page and so. But when you go into the belly of what is happening, go talk to people. I mean, you're a journalist. Talk to the people, the middle managers, the grassroots people, as to what are their take on how the process for the elections at this Congress developed.
Well, I'm absolutely sure, Mr. Hamilton, that the middle managers may not say anything, and I'm sure that there are persons at the grassroots level that may fear victimization or discrimination from the very same persons who are now aspiring to have maximum power within the party, or who are aspiring to lead all aspects of development in life. And, controlling thought is an important thing within any political organization, especially those that aspire to become government. But I thank you very much for joining me on another edition of the CIA. I believe the viewers have gotten an independent perspective with respect to what is taking place within the PNCR as the party prepares for its Congress. I also want to say at this point in time that I plan to invite some other members, current members of the People's National Congress Reform. I am not sure whether or not they will accept my invitation to speak with me about the Congress of the party and some other party matters. I may very well invite Mr. Granger himself to come and defend himself against the public opinions that are